How are you, everybody? A happy Friday to you all, and hope you are looking forward to a long weekend. I know that I certainly am. So guys, if you caught my video yesterday, I was talking about the Bulls' upcoming offseason and how this is really going to be a critical one for them, given the Bulls are going to have heightened expectations on them from last season with the additions that they made at the trade deadline and the fact that the evaluation year from the front office is now over, and we as fans were going to want to start seeing some results. Now, in that video, I had addressed my predictions on who on the Bulls roster as of right now will remain with the team starting next season and who will be leaving the franchise. Now, at the end of that video, I mentioned that in my next one, which is this video, that I would discuss which players the Bulls would be bringing in to fill out all of the available roster spots based on who I thought wouldn't be returning, and that's what I want to talk about here. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, really quick, a huge shout out to Viget for sponsoring this video. Viget is an online sports social media and betting app. It enables you to discuss sports, bet with friends, but all with fake money using coins. But as you can see, you can use the coins to win actual prizes like Amazon gift cards, flat screen TVs, PlayStation 5s, yes, all of these for free. The app is free to download and it is free to play and free to win the prizes. And guys, if you've been following my channel for a while now, you know that I occasionally have sponsors reaching out to me to promote their products, but I rarely agree to do so unless I can really get behind the product or services that they're wanting me to promote, something that I can actually see myself using. And I use this app virtually every day because I like sports betting to make the games just a little more exciting, but I also don't like losing money. So playing with free money, but still having a chance to actually win stuff as a result, sign me up for that. Anyway, if you use my code BULLSCENTRAL, you'll get an extra 1,000 coins when you sign up, or you get your way right on to getting started with those prizes. All of the information and the link to my code can be found in the description. And as a disclaimer, if you use my code, I do receive a very, very small commission for it. So if you want to help me out with something that is at no cost to you, then feel free to download, only if you're interested, of course. Anyway, let's get into the content. So as I mentioned, if you caught my video from yesterday where I discussed who on the roster the Bulls would have staying and who would be leaving, I ended up with 7 players that I believe will remain on the team for next year. Not necessarily who I want, but who I think the front office will actually realistically keep. And that was Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Troy Brown Jr., Daniel Theis, and Thaddeus Young. Those are really the only guys I expect to return to the roster. Just seven guys, which, you're talking anywhere from 5 to 8 roster spots available depending on two-way contracts they decide to go with. Now, as for the salary, at least for the players who aren't free agents and are already under contract, which is really all of these guys with the exception of Daniel Theis, I'll get to him in a second, but with the exception of Daniel Theis, it is around $76 million. This assumes that the Bulls pick up Thaddeus Young's last year of his contract for the full $14.2 million. Again, this doesn't include Theis. I'm also going to add on an additional $3.4 million to the books. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, I'm predicting the Bulls will waive and stretch Al-Farouq Aminu at $10.2 million over the course of 3 seasons, meaning his salary will be on the books at $3.4 million for the next 3 seasons rather than $10.2 million all at once next season. This gives the Bulls a little more flexibility with their cap space because they're not going to be able to trade Aminu with that contract, and I doubt that they're just going to let him ride the bench the whole season at that price point. So just cut your losses and use the stretch provision. This also assumes that the Bulls trade Satoransky and his $10 million contract, which is only partially guaranteed at the moment. So that brings the Bulls to a committed salary of $79.4 million. Now, with the Bulls needing to extend Theis, it's probably going to cost them a good chunk of change, at least relative to what Theis was making this past season. This means Theis was making $5 million, and because he's actually going to be a desired player this offseason with this rim protection and energy on the court, there is a lot of interest from other teams outside of the Bulls. So I actually think it's likely going to cost the Bulls in the $9 to $10 million range. So for argument's sake, let's say the Bulls sign Theis to an extension for $9.5 million a year. That brings their payroll to now a total of $88.9 million. That's for 7 players, the ones that I mentioned in the video yesterday. Now, the salary cap for next season in the NBA is $112 million. That doesn't include going into the luxury tax, which teams can use as an exception of going over the salary cap for players on their roster if they offer extensions to them, signing draft picks to the rookie deals, or any other trade exceptions or mid-level exceptions, which I'll get into all that in a little bit. But With the salary cap being $112 million, and with this hypothetical Bulls roster that I have constructed, and a total of $88.9 million towards their cap, that leaves the Bulls with $23.1 million that they have to work with. Again, not factoring in going over the cap and into the luxury tax, which we all know the Reinsdorfs hate doing. So when you look at it, you might think, okay, $23.1 million is actually a sizable amount of cap space for the Bulls going into the offseason. That's more than enough to get someone like, Lonzo Ball. Well, the truth is, you're talking about at least 5 roster spots that you need to fill out. And with the way that some of these players in the NBA are getting paid, that is not going to get you very far. Even Lonzo alone, who some are saying that he's looking for $20 million a year, which I don't think he's worth that much at all, but that would only leave you with $3.1 million to sign 4 other players. Well, that's where a sign and trade is so key for the Bulls, because by trading a player, for a player anyway, rather than signing him as a free agent, you can then count that salary towards going over the cap and into the luxury tax. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I do think ultimately the Bulls will be able to execute a sign and trade for Lauri Markkanen. I don't think that they're likely going to get that much in return for him, but something is better than nothing. Now, I made a video just a few days ago on the scenarios of what the Bulls should do with Lauri Markkanen, and I gave 3 sign and trade scenarios in that, but the one that I like really the most, that is potentially the most realistic, is a sign and trade with the Spurs for Lonnie Walker. I think this trade works out for both sides in the sense that Lonnie Walker just hasn't really fit that well in San Antonio in the system that they have there. He's underperformed, for them relative to the expectations, and there's supposed interest from the Spurs in Lauri Markkanen, and a team like the Spurs could use an outside shooting big man. I like the idea of Lonnie Walker because not only is his salary cheap, since he's still on his rookie deal at $4.4 million next season, so it doesn't hit your salary cap all that hard, even if it means you're going into the luxury tax. And it gives you a backup shooting guard behind Zach LaVine, who is, Lonnie Walker is still young. He's only 22, and I feel still has upside potential if placed in a new environment that fits his strengths. And again, I know some are going to be like, Lonnie Walker, really? Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but the Bulls aren't going to be able to get much in return in a sign and trade for Lauri. Most likely, they're not going to be able to get anything in return and just let him walk in free agency. So this is better than nothing. If things don't work out with Lonnie Walker, well, he's going to be on the final year of his rookie deal next season, and they don't have to extend him in a qualifying offer. So this puts the Bulls at $93.3 million on their payroll, leaving them with $18.7 million in cap space. But keep in mind, Lonnie Walker's contract would be eligible to go over the cap and get into the luxury tax given they acquired him via a trade. Now, this is where things get a little tricky, because we all know the Bulls are looking to upgrade at the point guard position. And if you caught one of my videos I did a few weeks back, I was talking about the Bulls' top free agency prospects that they should pursue at point guard. And the one I believe that is the most realistic, not saying that it's the best option, and it's not Chris Paul because he's not going to decline his massive player option. It's not Mike Conley because he's on a good team and isn't going to leave a contender for the Bulls. It's not Lonzo Ball. I think some team is going to overpay him, namely the Knicks, and the Bulls are not going to want to be willing to match and say forget that. But rather, the point guard that I think the Bulls should pursue is Kyle Lowry. Now, I explained in that video that initially Lowry was going to be one of my last options for a point guard that the Bulls should try to bring in, because he's one of the older ones, one that actually has been on the decline, still a great player, just not the same all-star that we were once used to seeing. And I figured Lowry would likely want too much money. However, as I thought about it more and more, I think this option of going after Kyle Lowry makes sense for a few reasons. One, I think it's too early to give up on Coby White. And by bringing in Lonzo Ball, although I think he would fit nicely with the Bulls, I don't think, he's going to be worth the price tag that some team is going to give him. But also by bringing in Lonzo, you're essentially writing off Coby because he's not going to fit or develop on this roster if you bring in someone like Lonzo Ball. Now, you're probably thinking, well, you could say the same thing about Kyle Lowry. Well, the key difference is Lowry isn't going to be around long term. He's not going to be the point guard for the future. But what he can do is be a mentor to someone like Coby White, help him develop into a better floor general and playmaking point guard and a better defender, and Lowry, because of his experience, his IQ, and success at the highest level of basketball, being an NBA champion, that accelerates your timeline in trying to win now and maximizing Vucevic and LaVine's prime, rather than going with someone like Lonzo, who, although is good and there is upside potential, but is a bit of a wild card, because like Kobe, he has also been an inconsistent player throughout his career. The question is, well, how much are we talking about with Kyle Lowry? Because despite his age, he's not going to be cheap. He's still going to expect to get paid in what will likely be the last contract of his career. And Kyle Lowry is going to be tempted to go to a contender. So I'll be real with you, the chances of the Bulls actually swaying Kyle Lowry are probably low, because he's going to want to get paid probably more than he's worth, and he's going to want to go somewhere where he knows he can win. But what if the Bulls offer him a bit of a lower salary but on a longer term deal? And then that last video, when I talked about this, I mentioned doing a 2-for-1 deal, or a 2-and-1 deal for Kyle Lowry, essentially a 3-year contract with the final year of his deal being a team option to give the Bulls some flexibility to move on from him, considering he'll be 37 by that time, yikes. Or if he's still playing decent basketball and Kobe has been developing and learning a lot from him, you keep him for that final year of his deal. And then by then, maybe Kobe White is starting and Lowry's coming off the bench. Now, how much, are we really going to give up for Kyle Lowry? I think for anything less than $20 million a year, and even that is too little, Kyle Lowry is probably going to just say no. He's going to be looking for something more in the $25 million to $30 million range with his skill and experience. But a longer term deal like the one I mentioned, a 3-year, $60 million contract, so 40 of that being guaranteed, that's a pretty hard offer to pass up for someone like Lowry at his age, when in reality, he could likely get $25 million or $30 million this upcoming season, but only on a 1-year deal. And that rate, most likely, and to have a 3-year contract, 2 years of it guaranteed, you would hope that he would be enticing, that would be enticing enough for someone like Lowry at his age, because it's not like this is LeBron at age 35. This is Kyle Lowry we're talking about here. Now, because of the trade exception with Lonnie Walker, that enables you to go into the luxury tax. You bring in Kyle Lowry at $20 million a year. It essentially leaves you with $3.1 million in cap space. Not much, and you still have 3 roster spots to fill, at a minimum, if you want to make it a 12-man roster. Well, the good thing is that in the NBA, they have what is called a mid-level exception that enables a team to sign a player above the salary cap at a mid-level price. The max amount that you can pay for that is $9.5 million. Now, a guy that I've said on here before that I think the Bulls should target for the mid-level exception is Doug McDermott, just to give them some additional wing shooting. McDermott is actually having one of the best seasons of his career. Of course, any former player who was lousy for the Bulls gets moved and plays better on a different team, right? Typical. And as frustrated as I was, when McDermott was with the Bulls and just watching him play, but I think, I was mainly frustrated at Garpax that we traded 2 first-round picks to move up in the draft to get him, and of course we traded them to Arturas Karnisovas nonetheless. But I think bringing in McDermott at around $7 or $8 million, which fits that mid-level exception that the Bulls can take advantage of, is a nice piece for a role player that can come off the bench. And then the remaining 2 spots that the Bulls should use, one to bring in their 2nd-round pick from this past year overseas, Marko Simonovic, and then whoever they select with the 38th pick in the 2nd round in this upcoming draft. Both of these players, because they're 2nd-round picks, won't cost them much of anything, and draft picks are also another exception to the salary cap that enables a team to go into the luxury tax to sign their drafted rookies. So all in all, and sorry, I know this video is very long, but the roster would essentially look like this for a 12-man roster. You have Kyle Lowry and Zach LaVine starting in the backcourt. I still like the idea of starting Troy Brown Jr. at the 3 to give you more defense in the starting unit. You then put Patrick Williams at the 4, and of course Vucevic starting at center. Coming off the bench, you would have Kobe White as a combo guard, playing both point and the 2, rotating between backing up Kyle Lowry and LaVine. That way he's still able to get enough minutes that it doesn't impede his development, and then he learns from Lowry as a mentor. Then you have Lonnie Walker also coming off the bench at the 2 or even the 3, because he has played small forward in very limited minutes for the Spurs. Doug McDermott coming off the bench at small forward behind Troy Brown Jr. Thaddeus Young coming off the bench at power forward, as well as Tice as our backup center behind Vucevic. And then of course you have the 2 2nd-round picks, Simonovic and whoever the Bulls select with this year's second round pick as your 11th and 12th man, likely not really in the rotation, but might get some minutes here in garbage time. And yes, I know all of this would change if the Bulls happen to get lucky and land a top 4 pick, and to be honest, as I was even making this, I realized it's way too early to even make free agency offseason predictions, because really so much can change while the NBA playoffs are still happening, as some players might get disgruntled depending on how their team performs in the playoffs, or a contending team that falls short could blow up their roster entirely, which opens up all kinds of doors for the Bulls in terms of their options this summer to improve it. So really, I'm likely going to have to make updated predictions throughout the offseason depending on how this season closes in the playoffs, where, you know, the Bulls land in the NBA lottery. That's also another thing that's up in the air, and of course any other moves that are made between now and August 2nd when free agency begins. But either way, let me know what you guys think. What do you think of the roster that I have laid out for this team in terms of what's a realistic option given the Bulls salary cap and available free agents? Let me know in the comments, and as always guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in guys. As always, I know it was a long one, and I will catch you guys in the next one.